8th. It is 12:30 on the dot. Today, we will be going through Senate File 1311. Senator Kunish?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to make a motion to move House File 1477 to Education Finance before we begin.
Oh, absolutely. Senator Kunish motions to refer Senate File 1477 to Education Finance. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. 1477 to Education Finance. All right, Senator Cwodzinski, to Senate File 1311. Would you care to?
I would like to offer the A18 author's amendment, but I'd like to walk through it first before we vote on it.
That sounds great. Senator Cwodzinski, to the A18 amendment.
Just a couple quick changes. Does everybody have it? Okay. The A18 amendment just changes a couple quick things, tidies things up. One of them is we already talked about in committee, changing the Minnesota on line 1.5.
Senator Cwodzinski, will you talk into your microphone? Thank you.
Again, a rare ask in my life. Line 1.5 changes the high school league from 20 to 22. Line 118, I think this is something I can't believe. It never dawned on me until this was brought to my attention. But to add the word disability to gender, class, sexual orientation, gender identity, legal status, that's in my opinion, a welcome change. And then line 29, or line 119 on the amendment, add some additional language. That's Senator Coleman's bill. And then there's line 124 in the amendment, changes a couple things, and that's Aaron May Quaid's bill. And then the on line 2.4 changes a couple things on recess and other breaks. And then that I think is, and then classic on line 411 of the amendment, classic example of compromise. It's Senator Hochschild's bill, and somebody wanted 60 days and somebody else wanted 120 days, and Senator Hochschild basically said, can we live with 90? And all the stakeholders said, yeah. And so it's a nice thing to see in the legislature, such a simple compromise. And I do believe that's it. And then in the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I will ask you for some advice. Do you need to move your A3 before you move your A18 amendment to the amendment? No.
A4, you mean?
Yeah. Correct. Yes, yeah. Okay, so Senator Cwodzinski, do you move the A3 amendment?
Yes.
Great. And then you move the A18 amendment to the amendment?
Correct.
Great. And then would you like us to adopt your amendment to the amendment?
Correct.
Okay, so Senator Cwodzinski moves to adopt the A18 amendment to the A3 amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The amendment is adopted. Senator Cwodzinski, to your A3 as amended.
Well, we've already gone through the bill, so I'm welcoming testifiers and amendments, and let's see how this goes. And it's definitely a new experience for me, so hope the next 2 hours of our lives together go wonderful. And but anyways, so that's all I got to say, because we've already heard it all. So
great. Well, we will start with our testifiers. Commissioner Jett, please come to the table, and you may introduce yourself for the committee and begin your testimony. As Commissioner Jett comes to the table, I'm going to just let everybody know. So we're going to do 15 minutes of testimony in favor and 15 minutes in opposition of the bill or specific sections. So when testimony reaches this mark, I might have to cut you all off. Ms. Green will be timing our process today, and Ms. Elling will notify you when you have 2 minutes remaining. So that's 15 minutes for, 15 minutes against. I will hold folks to that time. You'll be known when you have 2 minutes remaining.
And Madam Chair.
Senator Abler.
So just to as life goes on, the minority debates process, the majority debates policy. But sometimes the process just needs to be mentioned. I believe this is a grossly inadequate amount of time for a bill this size and import to be discussed by the public. And I'm just mentioning that. I don't, the bill, we barely had time to get through questions the first day with the members, and then the testimony is coming at a later time, and this is that later time. Of a bill that has this many consequences, this many groups, if you look at the letters you've gotten, there's some of these things deserve to be fleshed out in much more time than they're going to be allowed, so I'm just offering that. And so just because I'm also interested in the policy, I have some policy concerns as well, which we'll discuss later. Thank you,
Senator Abler. Commissioner Jett, please introduce yourself for the committee, and you may begin your testimony.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Willie Jett, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Commissioner of Education. Thank you for the opportunity to share my support for your education policy omnibus bill. I first want to thank you for including so many provisions from the Governor and Lieutenant Governor's policy bill, which is predicated on our Due North education plan and seeks to work toward the goal that every child receives a high-quality education, no matter their race or zip code. We've been working on these proposals for many years, and I'm happy to see them in this bill. The proposals in this bill focus on centering the whole child in all that we do and builds Minnesota's world-class education through a safe and welcoming environment, with caring and qualified teachers so that students, as unique individuals, are seen, valued, and heard as they come into our school buildings each and every day. I want to highlight the importance of a few of the packages in my comments today. Creating a safe and welcoming environment requires providing programs and supports where students see themselves in their education and feel protected. Thank you for embedding ethnic studies and indigenous education for all in our academic standards, while still allowing students flexibility in their schedules to pursue their academic interests. We have filled staff supports funded during the 2021 legislative session, and this will embed the fabric of our increasingly diverse state across all of our academic standards. I also appreciate the inclusion of all the past proposals for American Indian education, from honoring students' right to wear items of cultural significance at graduation ceremonies, banning mascots depicting American Indians, to empowering American Indian parent advisory committees, allowing data sharing with tribal nations, and using the state count of American Indian students. All of these take the necessary steps towards supporting some of our most underserved students. We know that students need to be in the classroom to succeed academically. Every minute that students miss of instruction has a detrimental impact on their learning and subsequent achievement. This is why proposing next-generation alternatives to exclusion is critical to the academic, mental, behavioral, and social-emotional trajectories of our young learners. The implementation of system-wide non-exclusionary discipline practices, a package the department has proposed for several years, is paramount to keeping students in the school setting and committing to their success and closing the achievement gap. This policy language works in tandem with the investments proposed by the Governor and Lieutenant Governor to support professional development in non-exclusionary discipline practices, alternatives to suspensions, and model discipline policies. Caring and qualified teachers is another prong in meeting the needs of our students. We know that supported teachers provide a stronger teaching and learning environment, and students need to see themselves in who is teaching them, and when students learn from diverse teachers, all students benefit. I am thankful that this bill builds upon the funding passed in prior sessions by establishing a goal for a more diverse teaching workforce and embeds culturally competency expectations for our educators across a range of statutory programs. I am thankful for the work of the Teachers of Color and American Indian Teachers Coalition in this space. We are grateful for their partnership and their dedication to increasing the number of racially and ethnically diverse teachers in our classrooms, and that these classrooms foster culturally inclusive practices. We also appreciate supports like protecting educators who teach about federally protected class of people, getting rid of the basic skills test for licensure, and allowing for flexibility in the composition of all teacher licensure exams. There are so many other provisions in this bill that allow for our students to have a world-class education and succeed academically, like making sure that students pursue post-secondary enrollment options with the support of public education funding, and that they're able to access the programs of their choosing, regardless of their religion, creating stronger expectations to support students' social emotional learning, a range of improvements for charter schools like market need and demand studies and stronger oversight, allowing all districts and charters to provide online learning and modernizing the definition for SLIFE students. I would also like to note the inclusion of several provisions that allow the department to do our work efficiently, effectively, and with the most accountability. So thank you for including several items in the standard space to assure that we can review and revise all academic standards on the 10-year cycle without getting new authority. I appreciate the separate fast tracking and inclusion here of the delay of the review and revision of physical education standards. And I'd like to thank you, especially Chair Cwodzinski, here for providing relief for our physical education teachers. And thank you for including the several proposals to allow us increased transparency, accountability, and our oversight of participants in federal nutrition programs. This bill acknowledges and honors the diversity of our students, families, and staff by keeping students in the classroom through alternatives to suspension, creating opportunities for all students to see themselves, diversifying the teacher profession, and promoting a range of worthy policies that seek to increase transparency and accountability. It is clear that we have many shared goals and the opportunity to act boldly to enact and transform and common sense policy language. So thank you again for the opportunity, and I'm here to offer our support for this bill.
Thank you, Commissioner Jett. Members, are there questions for Commissioner Jett before we release him from the table? Senator Abler.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Commissioner, for being here. And, I appreciate how you're off to a quick start here, and this is a pretty big bill, and clearly a lot of it predated you. And I'm not sure, you haven't been privileged to be a part of these discussions until now, and I'm glad you're here today. And there's going to be a very short window for people to testify about their concerns to the bill, but you may be aware that there's a number of groups, not minor groups, like every major group that runs things, principals, et cetera, school boards, that have some very real concerns about the workability of some of these proposals. And I would imagine that you're going to be open to those discussions as this bill moves along, and then offer, at least understand their concerns. And so just, are you aware of the concerns that many groups have with some of these provisions?
Commissioner Jett.
Madam Chair, members, the answers to that question, Senator Abler, is yes. We've been meeting we're hearing concerns, we're in constant conversation. And so when you say, are we willing to listen and to work through? Yes.
All right.
Senator Abler.
And Madam Chair, I know there's a lot of action to go today, and I'm not going to, interrogate you, Commissioner. I'm really glad you're here. I think that the nature you bring here as you talked about, see and value and hear is exactly what we're after here. And there's, I think the audience and the different groups that are trying to make this work share your values. They share a lot of the issues about trying to achieve equity, but in a way that works. And I think, very frankly, they've been telling you that some of these things just simply don't work. So hopefully this bill moves along to the floor and in a conference that those voices will be heard, and at the end the product will be a little more practical than this. So thank you, Mr. Thanks, Commissioner and Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Thank you, Commissioner Jett. All right, I'm going to invite Claire and Caitlin to the table for their testimony. Behind them on deck is Cindy and Shep. I will begin my timing as soon as you begin. Please introduce yourself for the record. You may begin your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on this bill. My name is Claire Luger, and I'm a special education teacher in the White Bear Lake area schools. In this bill, I appreciate so many of the great changes, such as Tier 1 teachers joining collective bargaining units, defining ethnic studies and institutional racism, cultural competency expectations, improving American Indian education, and requiring market and demand study language to charter school requirements. I am thrilled to see an investment in school libraries and hopefully in licensed media specialists. The students I teach have a variety of learning styles, and a modern library is what they need to meet their varied needs. I also appreciate the elimination of faith-based standards. Teacher prep programs should be available to all potential educators, especially with an ongoing teacher shortage issue that we have in Minnesota. I applaud all of the components of this bill, but I'm going to use my educator hat here to be what I call a warm demander. The bill is a great start, but we need more for our special education teachers. The paperwork that goes into large caseloads requires hours of detail-oriented work and frequently leaves us with the option of either working outside of our contract hours or prioritizing it over teaching. We still need caseload limits and dedicated prep time for due process work in our day. Minnesota has a higher level of paperwork than at a federal level, and some school districts require even more than the state's requirements. SPED teachers don't just do paperwork. We test, lesson plan, teach the same number of classes as our colleagues, and plan and attend IEP meetings for our caseload students and any students we provide service for. We also need to be able to drop everything for when student crises happen, which is frequently in the EBD world. The due process dates aren't negotiable for very good reasons, but the impact of that is that something else ends up being less of a priority, and that is frequently at the disservice of our students. Paperwork is the foundation for establishing what our most vulnerable students need and are entitled to in our schools. We have to ensure that it's done well. However, I don't want to have to choose between quality paperwork and creating meaningful work and connections with my students. It is important for teachers to develop relationships with students. It is highly critical for mostly our at-risk learners. The way to address this, as well as special education teacher burnout, is to require local districts to implement caseload limits and provide dedicated due process work time during the day so that we can spend more quality time with our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Narder, you may introduce yourself for the committee and begin your testimony.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee, my name is Caitlin Snyder, representing Education Minnesota. I have a list of about 38 things that I would want to comment on if I had all of the time and all of your attention this hour. But in the interest of time, I'd like to thank the committee for their work to improve the working conditions of the educators that run our schools. Thank you for including language that would allow Tier 1 teachers to join the bargaining unit, giving our early childhood, family education, and adult basic education teachers the same continuing contract rights and due process rights as all other licensed teachers, including language that our science teachers have asked for about the importance of earth science, making sure that our teachers are not being limited in their ability to provide instruction to students based on their inability to pass a racially biased basic skills test. And the language that was added in the amendment just now on negotiating e-learning days and changing the probationary period to 90 days. This is something that impacts not very many of our members, but the members it does impact. They're having sort of the worst year of their life if they have a premature child and aren't able to return to the classroom as quickly as they thought they would. These are really strong changes that will make a difference in the lives of our members. We appreciate the changes and definition for charter management and educational management organizations, the definition of libraries and media centers, the increased language about discriminatory practices for free meals, and also a strong commitment to ethnic studies, our teachers of color, requiring culturally responsive training for our principals under principal development and evaluation. This is something in particular the Minnesota School Counselors Association has asked for, so thank you on their behalf. Lastly, we appreciate the inclusion of the change to Tier 3 licensure. So we are in the business of making sure that we have enough educators to run our schools. And this isn't about removing anyone from the classroom. This is about making sure that the folks that are in the classroom have the skills to succeed. There are about 70,000 licensed educators that are not working in schools, and people leave because they don't feel like they have the right tools to address the problems. So we thank you for taking the approach here in the amendment in front of you and are available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Cindy and Shep. You can come to the table. And, okay, and then Katrin and Matt are behind those two. Please introduce yourself for the committee, and you may begin your testimony.
Chair and members of the committee, ha mataki api, shante washte iuha na pe chizu pa. Shante washte iuha na pe chiuzapi ye. Ma Dakota ye, shakpe mede wakantuan oyate imataha. Amos and Rose Crooks tioshpe imataha. Dakota ia Pejutu Yuha Maniwi de Mie, Washichu Ia Cindy Milda Imakia Pie. In Dakota, I said, hello, my relatives. I greet you with a good heart and a warm handshake. I am Dakota, and my homelands are the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux community, and I come from the Amos and Rose Crooks family. My Dakota name is Waxworth Medicine Woman, and my English name is Cindy Milda, and I am the Public Education Program Coordinator for the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux community, or SMSC. I'm here to testify in favor of Senate File 1311. My role with SMSC is to share our community's story with groups from school and church groups to senior citizen and youth clubs. In 1862, do you know what happened in Minnesota? In 1924, do you know what happened in the United States that affected American Indians? In 1978, do you know what was enacted for American Indians? I ask you these questions because these are all important dates for Indigenous people, as well as many other dates. This is just a sample. The Dakota War of 1862, also known as the Sioux Uprising, the Dakota Uprising, the Sioux Outbreak of 1862, the Dakota Conflict, the U.S.-Dakota War of 1862, or Little Crow's War, was an armed conflict between the United States and several bands of the Eastern Dakota. The Snyder Act of 1824 admitted Native Americans born in the U.S. to full U.S. citizenship, though the 15th Amendment passed in 1870 granted all U.S. citizens the right to vote regardless of race. It wasn't until the Snyder Act that Native Americans could enjoy the rights granted by this amendment. The American Indian Freedom of Religion Act of 1978 protects the rights of Native Americans to exercise their traditional religions by ensuring access to sites, use, and possession of sacred objects, and the freedom to worship through ceremony and traditional rites. Although 45 years have passed since the passage of ERFA, public resistance to the law continues in the present, signaling the need to continuing public education. I bring these dates up as many non-Native people do not know these significant dates for Indigenous people. Just to name a few. The Dakota War in 1862 displaced a lot of families from the state of Minnesota. It was the largest mass execution of the Dakota ancestors in the United States. My grandfather was 5 years old before he became a citizen of the United States in 1924. He went on to serve the United States Army and fought in the Korean War and World War II. I was 12 years old before I could even begin to practice my right to our Dakota spiritual beliefs. My grandfather was 59 years old before he could practice his right without getting into trouble from the law. I share these stories as these are shared stories with me by my grandparents and firsthand knowledge. We do not talk a lot about these stories because they can bring up so many different emotions and feelings. I also share this as a reminder that this history is not old, and our children need to learn along with non-Indian children. When I turned 18 years old, just 38 years ago, I was denied the right to vote in my home city, county, and state. SMSC members were subject to the land status in a city that considered us illegal aliens. It took Minnesota Supreme Court action in 1985 to restore our right to vote. My grandmother was a boarding school survivor from the Pipestone Indian School in Minnesota. She did not want her children and grandchildren to go through the same treatment she received when she went to school. Her hands were slapped for speaking her first language, Dakota, with a metal ruler. My grandmother did not teach us the language or most of our culture out of fear of institutional racism. At 56 years old, I am, sorry. At 56 years old, I am learning my Dakota language, along with my husband, my children, and my grandchildren. I apologize, sorry.
That's okay, take a minute.
Sacred tobacco is what we call chinchasha in Dakota, red willow, or more commonly known as dogwood. I carry a little pouch with me most days. Chinchasha is one of our 4 sacred medicines that we use as Indigenous people. There are teachings with every medicine. We don't carry them just to carry them. We carry them for a purpose. Prohibiting a public school district or charter from adopting a name, symbol, or an image of an American Indian tribe, custom, or tradition as a mascot, nickname, logo, letterhead, or team name from the district or school without a state's tribe's consent is inexcusable in this day and age. Another story I share in our public exhibit is of a tribal member who tried out for Shakopee's Indian Princess program back in the 70s. She has the nice long black hair, dark complexion, and probably should have been chosen. They chose another student who was non-native, put on a dark-haired wig, painted her face with dark paint, put a war bonnet on her along with an Indian dress costume. The member left the school in shame the same year to go to the Flandreau Indian boarding school in South Dakota. I currently serve on the MIEA, the Minnesota Indian Education Association Board. I think it is very important for the commissioner to listen to what TNAC, the Tribal Nations Education Committee, has to say about our children. They know and work with our children on a daily basis. They are in the schools with our children.
Ms. Milda, I'm just going to say that there's 4 minutes left in the 15 minutes, and we still have one more testifier, so I just want to let you know.
Okay. I'll be quick. American Indian culture and language classes are very important for our children to learn. At one time, these were taken away from our ancestors, as I have stated early. I would like my grandchildren to be able to wear their traditional clothing, feathers they have earned when they graduate from high school and college. It is something myself and my siblings could not do at the time we graduated. I ask you that our future generations have these chances we did not have because of fear of our grandchildren had for us because of institutional racism. These are just a few stories and experiences I share with you today, as there are many more I could share with you, but time does not allow it today. Please support Senate File Bill 1311 for our future generations so they do not have to go through the same fights that we had to or still have to go through today. Pidamayaye, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Mr. Harris, you have the remaining 3.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know how you want to divide up the time because I'm making comments in support and also expressing comments of concern. So I'll leave it up to you about how you choose to.
Why don't you start at the top with support? Let me know when you're done, and then I'll start the time for
Okay,
rebuttals.
sounds good. Thank you, Madam Chair. And members, my name is Shep Harris. I'm with Frederickson and Byron. I'm testifying today on behalf of the Minnesota Association of Independent Schools, also known as MACE. It's an honor to be here testifying this session for the first time before this committee, so thank you. For those who don't know, MACE is a coalition of 17 diverse independent schools spread across the state from Duluth all the way down to Faribault and in between. Their common theme is to maintain independence and partnerships at the local level. And there are a couple of items here we just wanted to comment on with the A3 delete all amendment to Senate File 1311. First, MACE is supportive of the language in Article 1, Section 14, which allows for transportation agreements between school districts and non-public schools. This flexibility helped support students and families during COVID and has proven worthy to be continued. So thank you for that inclusion. Generally, just like the language that was just inserted with the suicide prevention ID card section of the proposal, MACE would prefer more permissive and encouraging language in any parts that might be applied to non-public schools. Specifically, for example, MACE does have some concerns. I guess I'm tapping now, Madam Chair. I'm switching lanes, if you will. MACE does have some concerns with the provision in Article 5, Section 1 regarding reporting records. In this case, we're just concerned that one size does not necessarily fit all. Some of the MACE schools record disciplinary actions on a student's transcript, and some do not. Some require students to report disciplinary actions, such as a school suspension, on college applications, while other schools do not. So in this particular case, independent schools would like to retain that level of independence and mission-aligned judgment in making this determination about the disclosure. In addition, while Mesa understands the logic behind the proposal, there are some concerns around unintended consequences and does not wish for its schools to be mandated to identify possible behavioral services for the student. They could not and would not want to speculate about preventative services, nor would they want to put such speculation about confidential student matters into writing, which could unintentionally harm the child and possibly open the school up for liability. So with that, Madam Chair and members and Mr. Chair, thank you very much. We appreciate your thoughtfulness and considerations to these proposals.
Thank you so much. Katrin and Matt are next on deck. And I apologize if I didn't get your name correct. Mr. Heller. Oh, he's not here. He's not here. Please introduce yourself for the committee, and you may begin your testimony. And you have 14 whole minutes. Don't take them all.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of committee. My name is Katrin Wigfall, and I am a policy fellow at American Experiment and a former public school teacher. I am speaking today in opposition to several provisions in SF 1311, including changes to PSEO eligibility, reinstating licensure barriers, and how ethnic studies is defined. Everything in this omnibus bill and the work of this committee should be focused on improving student academic outcomes. As of last spring, nearly half of K-12 students can't read at grade level. Over 55% aren't proficient in math. The concern is that several provisions in this bill distract from that mission to get kids to grade level in math, reading, and science. We know what will improve academic outcomes, from literacy improvements to ensuring all students have access to the learning environment that fits them best. Such provisions, though, are missing from this omnibus bill. Instead, ideologically charged language under the terms ethnic studies is included. As a former teacher who had a room full of diverse students looking to me for knowledge, guidance, and wisdom, I witnessed firsthand the great strength in teaching and celebrating the many cultural backgrounds represented in my classroom. Students should absolutely learn about the rich cultures, histories, and economic and social achievements of the varied ethnic groups who have contributed to shaping our state and country. No one disagrees with the importance of that. But that is not what the plain language in this bill is about. The definition of ethnic studies in this legislation will teach students to view society in terms of race and class warfare. I can't imagine teaching my former students to view themselves and others through this narrow worldview. The ethnic studies definition in this legislation politicizes the opportunity to emphasize ethnic and cultural understanding, and I ask you to not include this language in the final omnibus bill. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Mr. Shaver, and then after Mr. Shaver is Mr. Aronson, who I believe is online.
Chair May Quaid, members of the committee, good afternoon. We've got some glows and some grows, so I'll signal here when I switch over. My name is Matt Shaver, and I'm the Tier 4 teacher and a policy director at Ed Allies. I'm here to provide our thoughts on Senator Cwodzinski's omnibus bill. We strongly support provisions Chair Kunish is leading on to include ethnic studies in our schools and all of Article 3 on American Indian education. It is great to see elements of Senator Mann's bills to embed non-exclusionary discipline practices that will make our schools an affirming and supportive place to be for our youngest learners. Also, Chair May Quaid's bill, which ensures all kids will have a chance to play at recess, is the dad of a very active 3-year-old and future public school student who I'm already working with on teaching the appropriate places at school to run and which are the unsafe or disruptive places to do that. I'm particularly grateful for this proposal so he and all Minnesota students will have an opportunity to access recess on a daily basis. Switching over, one area of concern from the Solutions Not Suspensions Coalition is on line 67.22, which adds pupil withdrawal agreements to the list of records which must be transferred to a new school. The whole point of pupil withdrawal agreements is to offer an off-ramp other than expulsion, which does not follow the student. Adding pupil withdrawal agreements to the list of documents which must be disclosed defeats the purpose of allowing the student to withdraw without being expelled. We respectfully request that the phrase, quote, as well as pupil withdrawals be removed from line 67.22. This is a good bill, and while we are grateful to not see one of the harmful Tier 2 coursework qualification reveal provisions included, it is disappointing to see the elimination of the experience pathway for teachers on page 89. One loose thread from last Thursday's licensure hearing was the question of the standards of effective practice. You may recall that one rationale given for why Tier 2 teachers may not be allowed to use their 3 years of teaching experience to earn a Tier 3 license is because they would be able to sidestep the standards of effective practice. Ed Allies participated in the development of these standards when the revision process began in 2019 all the way through August 2022. There are many new and revised standards, and these updates were long overdue. The experience pathway is called by some a loophole that because Tier 2 teachers would not need to demonstrate an understanding of these standards via a 100-hour plus portfolio process or through completion of a prep program. But it's important to note that these new and better and more inclusive standards of effective practice do not apply to the approximately 108,000 people with active Tier 3 and Tier 4 licenses in Minnesota. These teachers, myself included, will not be trained on the new and improved standards of effective practice or be required to demonstrate an understanding of them, and yet will be allowed to continue to renew our licenses in perpetuity. We respectfully request removing that provision on lines 89.12 through 89.18 from the bill. Thank you, Senator Cwodzinski, for the bill. Chair May-Quade for the opportunity to testify. Thank you all for your public service to our state.
Thank you both so much. Next, we have Mr. Aronson, who I believe is online, and then if Melinda and Carrie are here in person, you may come up to the table. We have, oh, I'm sorry, Senator Wiesenberg, did you have a question for one of the testifiers?
No, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to, I handed some information to the pages. If they could hand out that, there are some people that emailed me some information.
Thank you, Senator
Thank
Wiesenberg.
you.
The pages will make sure that gets out to members of the committee. I do want to give a time check for folks. We have expired 4 minutes and 30 seconds, so be mindful of the folks who are here with you as well, but please do be concise and informative. Roger, when you are ready, introduce yourself for the committee. You may begin your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Roger Arnson. I represent the Minnesota Association of Secondary School Principals and the Minnesota Elementary School Principals Association. These organizations make up over 2,000 principals and assistant principals in public schools throughout Minnesota. While the committee has heard multiple descriptions of the intent of legislation, you all know that in the end, it's going to be the language of the bill that controls. We would urge you to look closely at the language. We hope actually that this is the beginning of the discussion and that in the end, we can all have a bill that we can support. In making your decisions, particularly on the discipline, you know that you need to address two issues. One is how do we address racial disparities in suspension? And then secondly, how do we continue to manage behavior in our schools for safety and security? We believe that the current language poses some significant challenges for schools regarding student behavior. At the outset, we'd ask you, is it a good policy to divest elementary principals of the authority to suspend a student who poses a safety threat to themselves or others? The bill actually proposes that we end all suspensions in K-3. Elementary principals propose that we limit suspensions simply to where students pose a safety threat. In addition, on the recess bill, Madam Chair, which is your bill, we think that the standard for withholding recess should also be safety threat rather than the likely to cause serious harm standard that's currently in the bill. Thirdly, the major policy change regarding secondary principals is the requirement of the use of non-exclusionary discipline in all cases. The question that we have here is that in certain circumstances, principals need to use suspension, whether that's flagrant racial harassment, some of that the committee has discussed, bullying, sexual harassment, class disruption, or theft. The suspension of students for these behaviors would all end in what the statute calls non-exclusionary discipline. School principals would submit that they use non-exclusionary discipline every day, but at times suspension is a last option and it's necessary to address behaviors. Finally, there's a last provision in here that we want you to look at. It looks minor and innocuous on its face, but this involves the creation of a new complaint process for student discipline policies. The bill creates this new review process that must be completed within 72 hours for the receipt of a complaint. It involves making findings, conclusions, and recommendations. This is a rather significant change and we believe would cause some significant use of resources. We would ask you to take a look at the Minnesota Department of Human Rights report that was issued in June on student behaviors. That was the result of the 4 years of settlement agreements that the department entered into with several districts. Frankly, we think a lot of the recommendations in that report better serve the needs of our schools and students than currently how this bill is structured. We want to keep working with folks. I think when Senator Abler asked the question of the commissioner, has he been talking to people? We've had extensive talks with the commissioner and with the department, and we've engaged principals throughout Minnesota in this particular discussion. Committee members are going to hear about these provisions when you go home and talk to your school principals. We urge you to look at the language in these very closely. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Aronson. We have Melinda and Carrie at the table. Will and Beatrice will round us out here. And Beatrice is joining us later. Hybrid. Melinda, you may introduce yourself for the committee and begin your testimony. We're at 8 minutes, 20 seconds so far, so there's time.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. My name is Melinda Lowe, and I'm from Excelsior. I'm just a mom of 7 kids, and I'm opposed to the changes in the PSEO language in this bill, 1311. 25% of PSEO students currently attend PSEO at a faith-based institution. There's a long-standing precedent of PSEO students attending colleges that require a statement of faith. There's no good reason to change this now. It is obvious this change will force these institutions to choose between their deeply held religious beliefs or stop offering PSEO in person. Moreover, precedent is established in Supreme Court rulings Carson versus Macon and Espinoza versus Montana Department of Revenue that religious schools should be able to participate in publicly available programs without discrimination, and students should be able to participate in these programs on equal footing as students who attend non-religious schools. Making this change and forcing students away from faith-based colleges to secular universities will only increase the competition for already limited spots and decrease the choices available to all students. The U of M receives 1,600 PSEO applicants per year and only admits 45% of those applicants. My daughter is a sophomore in high school. She wants to be a nurse and will need to take lab science classes in person. She's been planning for years to go to Northwestern as they have a highly rated nursing program. If funding is pulled due to this amendment and PSEO is no longer an option for her at Northwestern, she will be forced to apply to the U of M instead. Now, my daughter is a straight A student who is recognized for having one of the top ACT scores in Minnesota when she was only 12 years old. I think it is reasonable to believe that she would be admitted to the U of M. And if that happens, she'll be taking one of the limited spots from someone who really did want to attend the U of M. These changes will limit PSEO options for Minnesota students. More choices allow for more options for more students. I'm happy to discuss this further with members outside of committee time, and I have handouts if you'd like information on the talking points I gave. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Carrie, and then after Carrie is Will, who can come to the table. Please introduce yourself for the committee, and you may begin your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Carrie Phelps. I'm a parent, and I'm a concerned citizen of Senator Limmer's district. I'm concerned about the rising cost of college and the mountains of student loan debt that many students acquire to obtain a college degree. I'm not a professional lobbyist, nor am I affiliated with any institution or organization. In my free time, I do moderate Minnesota's Homeschooling for College Credit online group, which is an indicator to you that I invest my personal time into helping students get college degrees without incredible mountains of debt. As such, I am very concerned about the inclusion of lines 19.8 through 19.11 in SF 1311, which I believe would negatively impact PSEO opportunities in the state. As I considered the proposed language and I organized my thoughts, I was reminded of Thomas Jefferson's famous phrase in 1802 about the wall of separation between church and state. And I'd like to frame my comments within this sentiment. I am proud of the state of Minnesota and the respectful way that the state and sectarian institutions, AKA the church, have worked together to provide educational opportunities to students of this great state, consistent with Section 16 of our Constitution that protects freedom of conscience. Public funding can be directed to sectarian institutions that require a statement of faith for non-sectarian programs and materials. We see this both with current PSEO arrangements, but also in private sectarian K-12 schools that do require a signed statement of faith from families, but are eligible for textbook reimbursement for non-sectarian materials. Well done, Minnesota. But directing of public funds is not the only way that the separation of church and state should be considered. Implied in the statement, church and state, is the idea that there is a church, and certainly that there is a state. Sectarian institutions do exist, should exist, and their freedom of conscience should be respected and protected. The particular language proposed in this bill would require sectarian institutions to forego having PSEO-seeking students sign an affirmation of faith. It may seem that for a sectarian institution, these statements of faith are simply administrative loopholes to admission, but they are not. As a religious person myself, I am here to affirm that these public declarations of faith are actually a central tenet of their faith, and they're central to the identity of these institutions. It is important that each member of a sectarian community make a public declaration of their faith and a public commitment to that community. Churches have membership programs and processes. These statements of faith are the institutional equivalent. This is an important understanding since these declarations of faith are so central to the sectarian beliefs of these institutions. I do not expect them to simply drop this requirement as if it were an administrative add-on, but instead drop out of the entire PSEO program. And this is the heart of my concern. This language, if passed, would decrease the overall number of PSEO seats available to Minnesota students, increase the competition, and push some marginal students out of PSEO altogether. And those most marginal students are likely the ones who have the most to gain through participation in the PSEO program. In summary, inclusion of lines 19.8 through 19.11 will work against PSEO's statutory purpose to promote rigorous academic pursuits and to provide a wider variety of options. I request that you please strike that language.
Thank you so much, and I think that language might be on different lines in the delete all amendment, and so I'll find those so I can direct
Thank
people
you.
to them, but thank you so much. All right, our last testifier for the moment was Will. Please come to the table, introduce yourself for the committee. You may begin your testimony. And you technically have 57 seconds, but I'll give you a minute 57. How about that?
Thank you very much. And thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm Will Johnson, a parent of 3, and speaking on behalf of parents across the state. We all agree that students should learn the history of different cultures and their challenges and their contributions to America. I certainly want my kids to continue learning this. But the ethnic studies language of the bill goes well beyond that. It risks conforming teachers and kids to a politicized and divisive worldview, which won't help improve academic outcomes and achievement gaps that are so important to address. And this is because of how the bill defines terms like ethnic studies, anti and institutional racism, as it mandates the belief that teachers and students look at the world as a zero-sum power struggle between identity groups. That children's current ability for academic success depends on their immutable traits. And it trains teachers and kids to stereotype others and treat them differently based on things like skin color. So how is that progressive? How is that inclusive and unifying? And how does that help empower all kids to thrive? Surveys show the majority of parents across demographics reject the division and discouragement that this fosters. And in part because they see, as NYU psychologist Jonathan Haidt, his research shows that if kids believe others or a system controls their outcomes, this more likely produces anger, anxiety, hopelessness, traits that are rapidly rising in today's youth. But if kids know they are unique individuals with self-determination, this leads to greater health, happiness, and success. Finally, the bill rightfully calls for respectful teaching and learning environments for all students and families. So does that mean that we'll respect diversity of thought for teachers, parents across demographics who want their kids treated as individuals and empowered to know they have agency? The top-down mandate nature of this bill makes us skeptical. So we encourage you to pause on this part of the bill to ensure that as we rightfully teach kids about different cultures, we do so in a non-political, balanced, and uplifting manner that reflects the values of the majority of Minnesotans, because doing so will help prepare all kids to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our last testifier is in class and will be joining us at 2 o'clock where we will pause. Mr. Heller, please come to the table. You can introduce yourself for the committee. Yeah, we are over our 15-minute time, so is it okay if I give you what I gave Mr. Johnson, which is 1 minute, 57 seconds?
Yes, thank you, committee members and chair, for Opportunity to speak today on the governor's bill, which it doesn't state, but it's the 1311 bill. I unofficially represent the twice exceptional and print disabled. If anybody's interested on that, you'll find the language in the bill. If you go to page 27, they're adding services now to gifted and talented education programming, which is exciting because now they're actually going to have services, not just programs. Also on page 34, they're striking the word handicap and putting the word print disabled in there. That potentially could be a lingo word, just like twice exceptional. So my recommendation is somehow you define those undefined words if they do matter. In 2018, the Federal Communication Commission mandated that the phones would read out loud and be compatible to the World Wide Web recommendations called Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Same year that we signed a global treaty that merged blind and print disabled, which you find in a federal act called the Higher Education Opportunity Act of 2008. A new word now clearly is called eligible persons. And the Governor Bill 34, or should I say in the summary, it just says there's a technical change, but I believe it's more than that because they merged those two, it moved the bar down on people that certify authority. It used to be a medical doctor, organic in nature, could consult. Now it can be a superintendent of a school district, it can be a nurse, a librarian, a social worker, a reading specialist, vocational rehabilitation counselor, et cetera. You do find that application at the Library of Congress Services, which did put into their header that year, the same year we signed the global treaty, blind and print disabled. In 1931, the librarians noticed individuals were accessing the same content in the libraries as the blind and vision impaired. So we can't name them that, let's name them print disabled. It took this many years to find its way here.
Mr.
I'm excited
Hallerman.
about that, and I hopefully that you will consider defining what certified authority through executive order or through a resolution of the House and Senate to make local and state agencies know that other people that work for these places can do that. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak, and have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Heller. We appreciate your testimony. All right, I am going to go to member questions, comments, wonderments, thoughts, feelings. Senator Kunish.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I want to thank Cindy Milner for coming up here today and expressing the value of the work that we're doing to incorporate the historic content of our Dakota and our Anishinaabe ancestors. For those of you who don't know, I'm a descendant of the Standing Rock Nation, and many of the stories that you told are very similar to the stories that we have in my own family. It was not lost on me around the voting rights and equality of availability or of rights for my grandfather, who married a non-Native woman, and she could vote. She could hold a driver's license when he could not. The house had to be put in her name and not his name, and that's right here in St. Paul, and that's just a generation ago. And so the opportunity that we have to share a different viewpoint is going to be really so valuable, not just to our students and to our state, but to our ancestors as we go forward. And it's been really an incredible opportunity for me to serve as a state legislator and be able to garnish the support of many of our other legislators on both sides of the aisle when it comes to putting the truth in mind and also righting many of the wrongs that we have done. And you know, we're not angry, we're not vindictive, we just want to be able to share, the truth of the viewpoint from our Indigenous people. And this is the opportunity that we finally come to. And so there are many things in this bill, full-service community schools, Indian ed, all of these things that are going to really make a really positive difference for our students and for our teachers as well, and our school system. So thank you for putting together this incredible packet of policy, Senator Cwodzinski, and I'm really proud to partner with you in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kunish. Senator Duckworth.
Madam Chair, I was actually pointing at Senator Abler, but thank
My
you.
apologies. Senator Abler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I hope as this process moves forward, we can heed the words of the Commissioner that people are seen, valued, and heard. And for the member that for me being me and hearing that we've offered a number of this work has been worked on along the way, I don't see any evidence that we were seen, heard, or valued in the least. There'll be some amendments to come, and we'll be talking about the bill. It has a process to go, and I'm just relying on the goodwill of you as a chair, Senator Cwodzinski, to the committee, to the department and their new commissioner, and to the public at large representing secondary school principals, school board associations, and others that have concerns about this bill that need to make it work. And I have many comments to offer along the way, but there's some phrases in this bill that are simply offensive to me, and we'll talk about those later, and doesn't bring me closer. I have come a long ways in my understanding about some of the equity issues, and Senator Kunish and I have, she's tutored me, Mr. Chair, as well as others, to understand, and I'm very happy that the tribal regalia, mascot, and tobacco pieces are in the bill. It's appropriate, and I would put those on the consent calendar for me. And so, but there's some things in this bill that are actually dilatory to where we want to get to and will actually cause harm. And I don't think anybody wants to do harm. And so I'm not sure the appropriate time for my motion, Madam Chair. You can offer me advice, but my motion will be to divide the A3 amendment into 3 different parts. And the first parts consisting of Section 1, Article 16, Section 6, Section 7. The first is the PSEO, the second is Tier 2, and the third is just the whole bill at large. And so that's my motion, if it's appropriate to do that now.
Thank you, Senator Abler. So Senator Abler and I am going to look to Chair Cwodzinski a little bit too. In my experience, you've only been able to divide it in 2. So,
well, Madam Chair, I'll just make
Senator
one
Abler?
at a time.
Okay, Senator Abler.
I'm just telling you my entire plan.
I see.
So I don't plan to have 16 areas. I just have 2. But so if you're comfortable with.
Let's go with the first one.
Okay, so my motion will be to divide the bill.
Okay,
And
Senator Abler motions to divide the A3 amendment as amended. Will you want to show us where?
Yes, and that's on Section 1, Section 1, excuse me, Article 1, Section 16, page 18, which is the PSEO. And so the author of the bill has already pretty well moved to adopt, and so I'm just suggesting that we take that up as a separate adoption motion. So that would be the practicality of it.
I see. Would you like?
And I'd like to request a roll call.
Okay.
And that the results are published in the Journal.
Okay, roll call being requested and roll call granted, results published in the Journal. Senator Cwodzinski, to the motion to divide the A3 amendment, I believe on, well, Council, would you like to? Okay, Senator Abler, would you like to re-explain where you'd like to divide the amendment for Council?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd be happy to. It's Article 1, Section 16, page 18, and it's that entire section which relates to the PSEO. I think it covers 2 pages, maybe. No, it's all on page 18. It's lines 18.1 to 18.17.
Council, would you like to just repeat that? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, or Madam Chair, sorry, and Senator Abler, to make sure I understand what you're saying, you're suggesting to divide the A3 amendment on page 18. The first part would be everything before Section 16
No,
in
Madam
Article
Chair.
1? Is that?
Ma'am,
Senator Abler.
maybe I could just make a motion to adopt Section 16 on page 18. That'd be simpler. And unless the motion is already in front of us to adopt. But so I just would like to vote on that separately and the adoption process.
Senator Abler, we do have the motion to divide the amendment in front of us now. Would you like to withdraw that motion, or would you like to continue?
Just actually to council, and Senator Cwodzinski, are we presumed that you've already moved to adopt the A4 or A3 as amended? And if not, then I can just make a motion just to adopt that. And that'd be cleaner, probably.
Senator.
Whichever you prefer,
Abler.
Madam Chair.
Senator Cwodzinski.
I need the advice of
Counsel.
counsel. I'm really confused, Senator Abler, on what
Same.
you're asking here. Are you basically asking
Senator
to
Cwodzinski.
remove? Oh, sorry, thank you.
Speaking to the microphone.
Are you asking Senator Abler to basically remove Article 1, Section 16, all of it? Is that what you're asking for? Why aren't you writing an amendment to this?
Senator Abler.
To just delete it?
Senator Cwodzinski.
Well, no, and so the bill is before us yet to be adopted. And this is maybe not the usual way, but it's been done other times. And so we have not yet adopted the A3 amendment as adopted, and so every section is up for adoption. A person could, if there were, I'm not doing this, but they could move to go section by section and then discuss every one, but I have only two sections I want to discuss. And so if it would be appropriate and simpler, Madam Chair, I'll withdraw my division motion and just simply move to adopt Section 16, Article 1, Section 16, lines 18.1 to 18.17. Request a roll call, request that the vote be published in the Journal, and I'll be recommending a no vote.
Okay, so thank you, Senator Abler. I'm going to look at council to explain for me.
Madam Chair and members, I think maybe it's easier not to characterize it as a division.
Right.
Just characterize it as he's moving to adopt Article 1, Section 16, which is on page 18.
Right.
Thank you, council. Senator Cwodzinski.
I would be opposed to that change.
Thank you. And roll call has been requested. Do I see three hands?
Oh, yeah, and then the three publishings, yeah. So,
Okay.
and Madam Chair, I have a little discussion brief to it.
That sounds great. I don't see three hands for roll call.
Duckworth, no, roll call, you don't need any
you
hands for
don't
roll call.
Oh, and excuse me, in the
You
journal.
need three hands to publish it.
To publish in the journal.
So maybe
Can
you
I
want to
see-
ask again for three hands to publish it.
Publish in the journal.
I see three hands.
Okay.
I see four.
Okay, Senator Abler, to your motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And I wish we could have heard from some students. I was just amazed to look at some of the submissions. Do you realize you've gotten 160 people commenting on this section? And if members, if you haven't read this, it's really interesting and, and similar to some of the testimony, I would have liked to hear from some of the students. And I would have liked to hear from some of the students of, some of the minority students who have thrived in these environments. Northwestern, for instance, has 12% of the group are BIPOC students in this cadre, which is, out of that number, it's like pushing 50 over 10 years, it's 500. And our whole goal is to draw people in to something that they feel good about. And not that they don't have to be BIPOC to be drawn in, but just to be drawn in and feel safe. This has worked for 37 years. I don't understand the impetus by doing this. I think the testimony was clear what little we were allowed to have. This will indeed cause harm. And having spoken with Northwestern and Crown colleges in particular, they're not going to, there's no problem to fix. And the students who go there are very well respected. They already abide by the Human Rights Act. There's not any discrimination on that. But they do have it's a Christian community, and people they know that going there. And so, and as it was stated, this is a very deeply held conviction and faith belief on behalf of those institutions for 120 years in the case of Northwestern, and they're not going to change this. So what we're going to wind up doing is depriving perhaps close to 1,000 students a year the chance to be online. And if other places have competitive admissions processes, not these, and I suppose they do too, we're just going to cause harm to the program and not value everybody. So this should just disappear. And I'm going to urge members to vote no on adopting this, and so we can just belong. And I could talk much longer, but I'm consciously not belaboring it. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Abler. So just, members, I want to do two things. One, I want to let everyone know that no organizations or institutions that provide PSEO have reached out to say that this will impact the way that they provide PSEO. No students have reached out as well to testify. And then, Council, could you remind the members of the committee what a no or yes vote would mean on this motion?
Mr. Chair and, Madam Chair and members, the motion is to adopt that Section 16 on page 18. If you vote no, that is to not adopt the section as presented in the motion. And if you vote yes, it's to adopt the Section 16 as presented in the motion.
Madam Chair,
Senator Abler.
just to correct one statement.
Senator Abler.
Every one of these 160 people would have loved to testify, but they knew that the limitation was so short. And it would have been easy to get a dozen administrators from these schools to testify if they knew that they had time. I believe the way it worked out, there were only 2 testifiers about this. And so I don't know who chose what, but I'm just telling you, Madam Chair, it's just that statement is just not quite correct. So,
Senator Abel, everyone who reached out to testify was put onto the list, and then it was divided based on the list, how much time we did, so it wasn't vice versa. Senator Wiesenberg, and then I'd like to go to the motion so we can continue on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I have many people reach out to me, against changing this and leaving it the way it has been for a long time also. I find it interesting, Madam Chair, that we had someone speak from the Native American community, how they fought for the Freedom of Religion Act in 1978. Is that correct? Right?
Senator Wiesenberg, I believe that's correct.
So we fought for the Freedom of Religion Act in 1978, but now we're fighting to remove religion from some people, and that I don't think that's appropriate. This is removing that process for these kids who want to go to this school. We should just leave it alone. It's not hurting anybody. As I've said time and time again, we need to work on working together and not dividing, and that's what this is doing, is dividing people. We need to work together and leave this alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Wiesenberg. Council, one clarifying question. If we vote to adopt Article 1, Section 16, is it still part of the A3 or is it part of the bill? What happens?
Madam Chair, members, if you vote to adopt that section, it is then in the final bill.
Thank you, Council. All right, I'd like to move us to a vote. Senator Cwodzinski, would you like to say any final remarks?
No, we've heard this
Okay,
before.
great. The clerk will take the roll.
Senator Abler. No. Senator Bolden. Yes. Senator Coleman.
No.
Senator Duckworth.
No.
Senator Hauschildt. Yes. Senator Kunish.
Yes.
Senator Mann.
Yes.
Senator May-Quade.
Yes.
Senator Wiesenberg.
No.
Senator Cwodzinski.
Yes.
With 6 yeses and 4 noes, the motion does prevail. The article is adopted.
Madam Chair.
Senator Abler.
Thank you. I just have one other, and then we'll do things the more traditional way, and I respect that. But I saw you move to adopt. This is interesting this way as well. But so I move to adopt in Article 6, Section 7, page 88, which is the Tier 2 elimination.
Senator Abler, can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. It's Article 6, Section 7, page 88, and following maybe. Starts on page 88.
Okay.
And I would request a roll call and that it be published in the Journal.
Roll call requested, published in the Journal. I see 3 hands. Senator Abler, to your motion.
Well, thank you. And compared to some other topics, Madam Chair, this has been actually well discussed by the committee, and I thought it was persuasive, and the opportunities presented in the Tier 2 system are incredible. And in fact, currently there's 3,000, I get the exact number, 3,000 some teachers doing this, including 800 some who are BIPOC. And the bill is all about, can't we open more pathways and teachers of color and all that? Well, we got them. We've got like 800 of them, and only 17 have matriculated from Tier 2 into Tier 3. That's the problem. How do we get them to move? How do we get them to stay? The public school, or the school board member from Minneapolis, even at only 7 teachers, said, I could use 17. I could use 800. I could use 3,000 teachers in an area where people are not being drawn in. These are people that love what they're doing and they want to hang around. And so certainly in the bill there's a path for those to move through. But what about the future? What about the future in which we're much more competitive with our workforce demands, where they could be anything? And the thought they can just go to school and put in 2 or 3 years, and how hard could that be with their 3 kids and part-time jobs and trying to live their lives as though it's just a casual thing? Never mind the money. Well, let's give them scholarships. They can't fit it into their family lives, but they are serving now. And as we heard on the other night, are role models in many cases for these young students who are dyslexic and disinclined to hang around. Some people with special needs have even come in. We met an autistic teacher that night. And so, Mr. Chair, I will not impugn anything about you. I think you're an amazing human being, but I'm just really surprised that in your author's amendment there wasn't this very amendment, the area to delete this particular section. And I'll close up just with quoting somebody from Anoka in the tech program. They used the simple word devastating. And I don't think, and you know, we didn't get to hear from other school leaders. We had one person coming from Mr. Aronson, and God bless, he's the Al Newman utility player, does everything. That dates me, Mr. Chair. He does every position. But it's just one nice person. But you would have heard, if you would have listened to all these different school administrators and principals and the tech people, that this is just not a good idea. And so I'm glad we get to vote on it, but I hope that members will realize, I don't know, I'm encouraging you to vote no against devastating. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Abler. Senator Kunish, did you? I apologize. I thought I saw your hand up. Senator Cwodzinski to the motion.
I encourage members to vote no. Vote yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you for that facial reaction.
Thank you, Senator Cwodzinski. Okay, the clerk will take the roll.
Senator Abler.
No.
Senator Bolden.
Yes.
Senator Coleman. No. Senator Duckworth.
No.
Senator Hofschild. Senator Kunish.
Yes.
Senator Mann.
Yes.
Senator McQuaid.
Yes.
Senator Wiesenberg.
No.
Senator Cwodzinski.
Yes.
With 6 yeses and 4 noes, the motion prevails. Okay. Senator Duckworth.
Madam Chair, thank you. I'm just going to share some comments, and then I'm going to offer an amendment. But I guess first we have to adopt the A3. Is that correct? Or has that already been adopted?
Senator Duckworth, we're working on the A3 to get to adoption. Would you mind introducing your amendment and speaking and making your comments about that?
Is now the appropriate time?
Yes.
Very good, thank you. I'm just going to read from a couple of different letters that we got. The first letter is from the Association of Metropolitan School Districts, the Minnesota Association of School Administrators, the Minnesota Association of Secondary School Principals, the Minnesota Elementary School Principals Association, the Minnesota Rural Education Association, the Minnesota School Boards Association, Schools for Equity in Education. To be fair to the bill's offer, they say they do support some aspects of the bill, but then they go on to say they have concerns about the following. Article 2, Section 3, which requires a school board to adopt a written policy to address malicious and sadistic conduct. Article 1, Section 6, additional course requirements and credits in the areas of civics and personal finance. Article 5, Section 4, changes to school discipline without corresponding resources necessary for staffing and facilities. Article 6, Section 1, adding new reporting requirements under the world's best workforce. Article 6, Section 5, requiring a written policy on curriculum. Curriculum decisions should be made by locally elected school boards, working with their staff, parents, and communities. And finally, Article 6, Section 7, the elimination of pathways for Tier 2 and Tier 3 licensure. And just briefly, there is another letter amongst many that we received that says the following. Minnesota's secondary school principals are deeply concerned by several provisions contained in Senate File 1311. If enacted, we believe the provisions will have significant unintended consequences on individual students, school climate, safety, and resources. We have been actively engaged in discussions to change the provisions, but to date we have not seen any significant progress in these discussions. And so as we prepare to discuss a few amendments to the bill, Madam Chair, I just kind of want to ask rhetorically or pose the question, are we just going to push this bill forward to the floor and make it law because we think we know better, or are we going to sit back and listen to the stakeholders, parents, students, teachers, school boards, principals, and make some of the very valid adjustments and changes that they have been asking for and continue to ask for? So with that, Madam Chair, I have the A14 amendment.
Senator Duckworth moves the A14 amendment. The pages will distribute it to the chair, the chief author, the chair, and the members of the committee. Senator Duckworth, would you like to speak to the A14 while it gets handed out?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Senator Cwodzinski, this is a friendly amendment. This is a change to what Senator Westland offered earlier that found its way into your bill. I spoke with her about it earlier today. She said she would speak with you to let you know that she's okay with the change. On page 29, line 30, it deletes the word grades and inserts middle school, junior high, or high school. It also deletes what would be grades 6 through 12. And really this has to do with the ID cards and just making sure that how it gets applied makes sense. We'll apply it to buildings rather than specific grades, just to give districts the ability to, not if they have a grade that happens to be in an elementary or whatnot, they're trying to do different ID cards with different things on it for different grades in school buildings. So hopefully you've consulted with her and you find it to be acceptable. Thank you.
Senator Cwodzinski.
I do, might be the only time I say this today, but I accept your friendly amendment. It's a good idea.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All those in favor of the A14 amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The A14 is adopted. Senator Duckworth, if you don't mind, we have one last testifier who is here. Great, thank you so much. Beatrice, if you'd like to come off mute, come on camera, and begin your testimony. You have 2 minutes, 2 seconds remaining.
Thank you for having me. I am Beatrice Hanlon from White Bear Lake, Minnesota. I am a former PSEO student and current undergraduate student at the University of Minnesota. I want to thank the committee for giving me the opportunity to testify today. I am testifying in support of the amendment that will prevent eligible institutions from requiring faith statements and basing their admissions decisions on student identity during PSEO for PSEO applicants. Because these statements that are currently allowed as of now are specifically targeting and discriminating against minority students. When I was applying to PSEO programs across the metro, one of these programs I applied to was University of Northwestern St. Paul. And once I had been accepted, I was prompted to sign a faith statement and morality clause that stated I was a part of the Christian faith and that I did not and would not identify with same-sex attraction or identify as any gender beyond that of my assigned sex at birth at any point when I was attending that college. If I did identify as gay or transgender at any point of attending the college, I would have been kicked out of school for my identity because it was a violation of this faith contract. I identify as a lesbian, so in that moment, I had to decide to either get an education at this institution or hide who I was from school administrators. As a high school student, I ended up also being accepted other programs that did not require faith clauses, and I attended those instead, because they did not discriminate against students because of their identity. But not every student gets this choice, and students shouldn't have to choose between an education and being accepted for who they are. The PSEO program is intended to expand the secondary and post-secondary options for students in this state. And by allowing religious institutions to discriminate against students for who they are, the state is allowing institutions to target an already vulnerable population by threatening their education and portraying teenagers who identify as queer as dangerous and immoral for who they are. And this is extreme rhetoric that does not fit within the education standards of the state nor the PSEO program as it was designed. And that is why I support the clause that will ban institutions from asking PSEO students for faith statements and allowing institutions to discriminate against students on the basis of their identity. Thank you.
Thank you, Beatrice, and you were 0.52 seconds over. That was remarkable timing. Thank you so much for appearing in front of the committee. Senator Duckworth, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have the A16 amendment.
Senator Duckworth moves the A16 amendment. While that gets handed out to the chief author and the committee, would you like to explain it?
I would, Madam Chair. Thank you. For those of you who were members of the Senate last session, this bill might, this amendment might look somewhat familiar to you. It actually passed off the Senate floor unanimously, but unfortunately, we didn't get a comprehensive education bill done, so it didn't become law. This has to do with shortage areas. Oftentimes in our school districts, within our buildings, we're trying to get a sense of, especially during a teacher shortage, the critical shortage areas that we have, so that we can seek to develop great teachers in those areas and make sure that they are able to fill the classrooms in the future. So just to read a couple of lines, it's pretty simple. In terms of shortage areas and reporting and collecting data, it would include the number of assignments a school district is unable to fill with a licensed teacher by November 1st of every even-numbered year. It would take effect July 1st of this year.
Senator, can you cite the line, please?
Yes, I'm sorry, Senator Cwodzinski. Line 1.8 and 1.9, the underlined section there, was the first portion I read. And then toward the bottom, lines 1.25 to 1.29 talks about including the number of teachers hired in the preceding 2 years, the number of teachers hired holding licenses at each tier level, the number of assignments the school district was unable to fill with a licensed teacher, and licenses and permissions for licensed fields without a board-approved preparation program by economic development region. If you look to the back too as well, line 2.6, section 19, teacher supply and demand report. This would give us a better sense of some of the issues we're having in terms of finding teachers to fill certain areas. For example, on line 2.9, it talks about the number of teacher openings by district for teachers with licenses in the following fields: English as a second language, early childhood, special education, career and technical education, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, and world languages. For each of the field I just listed, the report must also include the number of teachers hired by school district at each licensed tier level and the number of teacher assignments the school district was unable to fill with a licensed teacher. Again, just giving us the ability, MDE the ability to look across the state by district and see where are our true shortages by subject, by tier, so that we at the legislature, working with MDE and Pellsby, can really target what programs we need to implement and incentivize to get great quality teachers licensed in the classroom as quickly as possible. Again, it was a pretty non-controversial bill last year that passed unanimously off the Senate floor. Would love to see it get added to the policy bill as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. I have a question for you. Does this bill cost money?
I'm going to defer to council. I know the answer to the question, but I want to see what, we'd love to see what one of our experts has to say first. Thank you.
Okay, council.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Duckworth is correct that this bill was introduced last year, and there was a fiscal note on the bill. The fiscal note showed a cost of $135,000 per year for section, it'd be 16 as written in the amendment, for the language on lines 1.8 through 1.9, as this is data that is not currently collected by Pellsby. So the fiscal note stated they would need an additional FTE to collect and analyze that data. As the committee knows, fiscal notes for formulas must be funded. However, fiscal notes for things like staff costs or IT costs are discretionary, so it would be the committee's judgment whether or not they wanted to fund that section.
So, Madam Chair,
Thank
if I
you,
may.
Senator Duckworth.
And thank you for that information. Given that it is a relatively small fiscal amount, considering many of the amounts we do pass in the legislature, I think the idea here is that it could be pretty easily absorbed by the agency. Thank you.
Senator Cwodzinski.
I'm going to urge a no vote. 3 quick reasons. One, there's no mention of social studies.
I'm happy to do an oral amendment right here. Thank you.
And then the other 2 reasons is, as was just pointed out, the financial cost. And this is a policy bill, and there's no financial cost. And also, one of the goals that I really believe I've not done as good of a job this session as I wanted to was to reduce the amount of paperwork that our administrators and our special ed teachers and have. And I think this would just add to the amount of paperwork that our districts have to do. And So for those 3 reasons, well, 2 reasons, I would urge a no vote.
Thank you, Senator Cwodzinski, and I'll add your third, which is Senator Marty won't let us. Members, all those in favor of the A16 amendment, respond by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay. Nay. The noes have it. The amendment is not adopted. Okay, we've got Senator Mann, Senator Coleman. Oh, sorry, Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to submit the A3 amendment.
Senator Mann offers the A3 amendment. Senator Mann, would you like to describe it while it's, sorry, the
Yes,
A5?
Madam Chair. So on page 81, line 27, the use of seclusion on children from birth through pre-K, pre-kindergarten. We are going to strike pre-kindergarten and insert 3rd grade. Madam Chair, we know that the use of seclusion is harmful. It does not work. This is not a complete ban on seclusion. Seclusion rooms still exist. We're just saying that you cannot put a child who at that age alone in a room without an adult present, letting them scream in terror, sometimes urinating themselves because they are so afraid. I ask for your support.
Thank you, Senator Mann, and I'm just going to restate, it's the A5 amendment that's being offered. And I believe this was in our packets. Questions for Senator Mann? Senator Cwodzinski.
No, nice job.
Okay. All those in favor of the A5 amendment, respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The A5 is adopted. Thank you, Senator Mann. Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to offer the A7 amendment.
Senator Coleman offers the A7 amendment. Would you like to describe your amendment while it is passed out?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Cwodzinski, now that this has been adopted, I do feel it is my duty to attempt to remove this back out. This addresses the faith-based statement portion of PSEO. I represent Crown College. I have a number of constituents in this room that are sending their students to these faith-based institutions. And I always try to attribute a lack of understanding instead of malice, and I do believe that is where you're coming from, is a lack of understanding. The intent is to not limit options for students when it comes to PSEO, but this portion of the bill is going to have the exact opposite effect. Because if you're asking these institutions to change who they are and their core values, to threaten their culture and what they fight for and go to work every day for, that's just not going to happen. They're going to shut down their PSEO portions, and I have heard directly from these institutions that that is a major consideration that they will have to face, and thereby you will be reducing PSEO options for students in the state. Now, without anything really touching seriously reading comprehension and literacy in this bill, this is one of the Republicans' top priorities in this. And as a man of honor who talks about wanting bipartisanship, I need to try again and ask you to please take this out of the bill. And let's have another conversation. Let's bring these faith-based institutions to the table when we have more time to talk about it and really consider what we are doing, what this bill says, this portion says about our respect for those institutions, if this is really harming PSEO students, and talk about this at a later date, but I would like to remove it today.
Senator Cwodzinski.
Well, Senator Coleman, I appreciate your intellect and passion for the issue, and Crown College does have one of the best views in the metro area of any school. But I have to also, again, urge a no vote on your amendment. I think that young woman testifying kind of summarized my views on this, and I think it, anyway, so I'll just leave it at that, but thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cwodzinski. Senator Duckworth and Senator Mann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. You know, it's been mentioned how much outreach we've gotten specific to this provision. It's very similar to when we got the significant outreach to the homeschool provision that was removed from this bill earlier this session. And, you know, we exist in the legislature, especially when it comes to education, to do many things. One of them is to provide as many good quality educational opportunities as possible. I don't understand why we would remove several great quality PSEO options from public school students in the state of Minnesota. And regardless if it had to do with a faith-based statement or any other thing, if there was a bill coming before me that was reducing options, that had parents and students up in arms, making it, and oh, by the way, this is when oftentimes we want to talk about tuition and the rising cost of tuition, and how we are trying to find ways to avoid mounds and mounds of student debt. If we remove this provision and we reduce PSEO options for public school students, we are not being consistent with talking points when it comes to trying to help make college and higher education affordable. We are not being consistent with the talking points of helping people have the most amount of educational opportunities possible in the state of Minnesota. That's what we exist to do. I have not had anybody come find me throughout my legislative career or while I was on the school board saying, hey, I really have an issue with PSEO. We really need to significantly limit the amount of options our students have. If anything, it's been the opposite. We need more of it. I think striking this language and limiting the options in the bill is a very, very, it's the wrong thing to do. It's the wrong move. I appreciate Senator Abler's attempt to get this earlier. I appreciate Senator Coleman's attempt with this amendment now. We need to pull this from the bill, and it would be an improvement and allow students to have more options. Thank you.
Senator Mann, excuse me.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So nothing in that provision will prevent or impact a student's freedom to choose where they go to school or where they go to their PSEO. It will not impact a school's ability to offer PSEO courses, and it will not force students away from their faith-based institutions. At no point in time, nothing in this proposal, nothing in this language says that a college can't advertise and affirm at every point what they stand for, what they believe in, what their faith beliefs are. None of that is prevented from happening. And so I urge a no vote on this.
Senator Kunish.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Senator Mann spoke pretty much what I would have said, pointing out the very obvious that we are not removing opportunity. We are not restricting options for our students to attend any school with this, with removing the faith-based statement. In fact, as we heard from our last testifier, with the ability to require a faith-based statement, we are actually restricting and removing opportunities for students to attend those programs that require it. And so I don't quite understand the argument coming from our GOP members. I do understand the reasons, and I think the passion behind organizations wanting to insist or mandate these statements. But if it means that our students, our PSEO students, aren't allowed to go to those schools because they either don't agree with those statements or don't even care about those statements for whatever reason, then we are limiting those students to opportunities. And so I too would suggest a no vote on this amendment.
Thank you, Senator Kunish. Senator Abler.
Sorry, I'm not quicker. I was just trying to figure out how many students go to PSEO. Does staff know that offhand? Why am I even looking if I have staff who knows that, Madam Chair?
Staff.
Madam
Senator
Chair.
Kunish?
Oh, does anybody have the
Yes,
information?
somebody does.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, you don't have it. Okay. Somebody's going to find it for you, Senator Abler.
Pardon?
Someone's going to find it for you.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever. It's certainly, well, I know that Northwestern has 1,700, 350 or so, which are on campus. And I know Crown is big. And I mean, those are the studied ones here. And a couple of people wrote that it was 25% of the population of the PSEO program in these 4 programs. But I spoke before, and I wasn't going to re-speak until I heard an absolutely false statement from my good colleague down the road, reiterated by my other good colleague. This absolutely will impact choices. We don't have to go very far to look amongst this table and the audience, as we've talked about, deeply held faith beliefs, beliefs of conscience, things we really believe that are very strong. The acting chair right now has some very strong beliefs that have been expressed from this chair on topics of equity and others. And so to simply think that if you believe that you can't sit by me and you can sit somewhere else, that you're going to quit believing that and not argue that you can't sit by me, and I like her sitting by me. It's just a goofy analogy I thought of. She's never going to yield on those beliefs, or anybody will, because there's some consequence that is avoidable. And so people have fought wars over all kinds of the spectrum of faith and religion and conscience. And they have given their lives willingly for the depth of their beliefs. And so if anybody thinks that there's going to be no limitation of choice in this thing, that's the sentence you're going to go on, by putting this up and saying, sorry, Northwestern, you can't have 350 kids on campus, 50 of which are BIPOC, 510 years that are going to maybe change their lives and help them thrive amazingly like this bill is supposed to be doing. And we're going to say, no, don't do that. We'll find 500 other kids we can help some way that aren't going to fall through the cracks. Not through tier 2 teachers, by the way. And so that's going to be our answer, is it's going to be fine. They are not going to yield on those beliefs. They're not going to. And if you want to have a discussion internally about how to address those beliefs and how to, that's a discussion they're going to have internally at their board level with the people that go there. And if you have a concern about those, then go talk to them. And, but I happen to know that they do abide by the Human Rights Act and that they do not use that. This young lady, and I'm sorry about the experience she had, but that doesn't define these institutions as that. One case doesn't define an institution. But I'm just telling you, if you think that this is going to suddenly make the program the same, it is not going to be the same. If indeed 25% of the students in the PSEO program, however many that is, and we're still trying to find out, it's got to be 1,000 or more kids, 5, I don't know how big the program is, but if 1,700, so I mean, it's a couple thousand people aren't going to get to go. And if indeed, as one of the testifiers said, as we listen to the testimony, which I urge people to do and not just put it off, they said that some of these programs elsewhere are competitive. And that one young lady who's like this ace student in Senator Cwodzinski, she must have been in your class maybe, or she would be a star student learning social studies and civics. She's going to crowd out somebody else. And those individuals, that same number of individuals, are not going to have the chance to go. And what's going to happen to those kids, the couple of thousand kids, at least, that are going to sit idly by and sit in a high school program that doesn't address their learning style, doesn't give them a chance to excel or just even hit par. But do not say it's going to be the same. It's a bad idea. It's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. But just don't try to tell me nothing's going to change. We are in the business of hearing all, caring about all, seeing all. 80% of the kids are going to go to a traditional public school no matter what other options there are. And a lot of those, in my district, the majority are not college-bound. I wish they could be college-bound. I wish they could go and be all they can be. And we push to have state schools available that everybody gets to get into. We have some other ones that are more restrictive when they go to college. But everybody deserves a chance to be whatever they can be at the top of their goal level. And please vote yes on this amendment. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Senator Duckworth, and then I'm going to go, and then we're going to vote on this so we can get to other
Sounds
amendments.
good.
Go ahead.
I'm going to be brief. I mean, just to build off of what Senator Abler said, I can't bury my head in the sand and pretend like this provision would not lead to any change whatsoever. If this provision becomes law and even one institution stops enrolling PSEO students as a result, we will have failed Minnesota students and families. I request a roll call.
Roll call having been requested.
Madam Chair, if I may make one brief comment on my amendment.
Senator Coleman, would you like to have the last word on your amendment?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to make a comment then. So, members, I think it's really important that we acknowledge that something will change when this is passed, and it is that faith statements will not be required for students, PSEO students, to enroll in some of these institutions. It will not change the beliefs of the institutions. In fact, they are not required in any way to change their beliefs. But what it will change is that faith statements will not be required for students to attend these institutions. And someone sent us some of these requirements. So we have a significant portion of Minnesotans who are Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, atheist, Catholic, Lutheran. And if they have to sign statements, for example, my daughter, who's Lutheran, I was the head of FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, when I was in high school. I was so into it, I literally lettered in it. It's on my letterman's jacket. And I could not have signed this faith statement, even though it is supposedly my faith, because it asks me to denounce my own marriage. My daughter would not be able to go to a PSEO that is in her faith because it tells her that her parents, her mothers, are broken. It requires a reference for someone to speak about their personal walk with Jesus Christ. What if someone doesn't have that reference? And so this will change something. It will mean that Minnesota students will not be discriminated against when they apply for PSEO. It will not change the beliefs of the organizations. It will not change the beliefs of the institutions, but it will mean that public school students, students whose public dollars are following them to these institutions, will not go to discriminatory places that are keeping them out by asking them these questions. They can keep their beliefs, but they cannot use them as a condition for admission. And so I'm going to ask for a no vote on this amendment because we cannot continue to let this happen in the state of Minnesota. It is a violation of the Minnesota Human Rights Act, and it's just bad policy. Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a final thought on this before we take a vote. I mean, I'm hearing from these faith-based institutions right now that this portion of the bill is going to force them to choose between their religious beliefs and rights and offering PSEO. That is the position you are forcing them into. I cannot imagine voting for that. So I would really encourage a green vote on this. We heard from the testifier. If you are not a fit with their religious beliefs, there are so many options for you, and she got into one of them. There are other options available, and we are shutting down and limiting these options with this provision. Please do not force these faith-based institutions into this hard, unbelievable, unacceptable choice. Please vote green on this amendment.
The clerk will take the roll on the A7 amendment.
Senator Abler.
Yes.
Senator Bolden.
No.
Senator Coleman.
Yes.
Senator Duckworth.
Yes.
Senator Hauschildt. Senator Kunish.
No.
Senator Mann.
No.
Senator May-Quade.
No.
Senator Wiesenberg.
Yes.
Senator Cwodzinski.
No.
With the noes being 6 and the ayes being 4, the amendment is not adopted. Members, I am going to offer the A6 amendment. Is this in everyone's packets? No. I will explain this rather quickly. This is on page 61, line 4. This just addresses funding for the pre-kindergarten and preschool programs for early learning services that are consistent with chapters, and particularly for the Metro Deaf School. I would appreciate a yes vote. And Senator Cwodzinski, would you like to speak to it?
I encourage a yes vote as well.
Thank you. Any questions about this amendment, senators? Okay. All those in favor of the A6 amendment? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. The A6 amendment is adopted. Thank you so much. Any other amendments? Senator Abler.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I do appreciate the discussion, and I think this committee is designed to have discussion, and we already talked about this topic, but as I was talking to some of my colleagues, they didn't feel like we had enough discussion about this, and so I would move the A9 amendment.
Senator Abler moves the A9 amendment. Would you like to describe it as it's being distributed to the committee and the chair?
It'd be Tier 2, Part 2, the sequel. And I think A lot of times, go ahead, Madam Chair, you want to start discussing it?
Go ahead.
A lot of times packaging makes a lot of difference, Madam Chair. You know, when they do commercials on TV and here comes a product and you go like, that's an interesting product, and you don't buy it, and you hear it again, you think, well, it could be an interesting product. You hear it the third, fourth, eighth time, you go like, this is a product that I really need to have. And so perhaps in the discussion under Tier 2, people were not fully apprised of the merits, and they didn't have a chance to warm up to the idea about not cooling off to the idea. And I just know some of my colleagues wish to talk about this because we had a short discussion about it. And so that's why I'm offering it. I still think removing the pathway from Tier 2 to Tier 3 is a really bad idea. And so many teachers live for this, and it's taking it back out of the bill is a good idea. So thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Abler.
Madam Chair.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you. And Senator Abler, I appreciate the amendment. I'm going to try to be as simple about this as possible so I don't get lost in some of the lingo that folks might not understand or not follow because they don't do this every day. It has to do with tiered licensure. At the end of the day, what Senator Abler's amendment is seeking to do is to keep as many pathways as open as possible for great quality teachers to stay in the classroom. Whether it happens to be Tier 1, Tier 2, or progressing into the other tiers of a teacher licensure, this amendment in its simplest form, and we heard from countless students begging and pleading for awesome teachers to stay in the classroom. We heard from teachers who this affects and impacts, that what we need to be doing in the midst of a teacher shortage in our state is providing as many pathways as possible for them to be in the classroom and help our students. That's what this amendment would do, and I'm fearful that there will be other areas in the legislature, other committees, where there's going to be even more significant restrictions or reductions of pathways specific to Tier 2 licensure. So we know this is an issue. We've heard from all the important stakeholders. We're here to represent parents, students, school districts, school boards, principals, you name it. We've got countless letters. I'm not going to read them to you. That is who is advocating for these pathways. That is who's advocating for the amendment that Senator Abler has presented. I'm just asking that we listen to the people we're here to serve. I'm not here to serve Pellsby. I love those folks. They do good work. I'm not here to serve the teachers union. I love our teachers. They do great work. But there's a difference in what's being communicated about this. We're hearing not from the union. We're hearing from teachers themselves that they want these pathways preserved. It's about time we start listening to them in the midst of the crisis that our schools are facing. We need folks of the utmost quality and experience in the classroom helping our kids catch up now more than ever. This bill will have the opposite effect on that. So I'm asking you, please vote in favor of this amendment. Please preserve Tier 2 pathways. Please allow for more great quality teachers in the classroom to help our students and our communities. Thank you.
Senator Kunish.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I really have to speak to this because I don't think folks quite understand how the tier licensing is working. Right now, we have 4 different levels of tier licensing. We have Tier 1 and Tier 2, where teachers who are maybe experts in a certain area, especially in the technical area, are able to come into our schools and share their skills and their talents. It also allows those without a teacher's license to teach in our schools, which we appreciate, as we all know that there are less and less teachers in the classroom for more and more reasons. But the way that it is set up is that a person could come in at a Tier 1 or Tier 2 level. They could teach for up to 6 years, never having taken an education course, never having enrolled in a teacher's licensure program, taken any kind of pedagogy or practice in the art of teaching. And I don't know how many of you out there either realize that or are comfortable with having teachers, and Senator Duckworth says we want to have teachers with the utmost quality in our classrooms, and we want to keep pathways open for great teachers to be in the classroom. And I can tell you right now, we have lots of different pathways for these teachers to get the training, get the experience, get the collaboration, get the mentoring that they need to be those great quality teachers. We're just passing the increased teachers of color and Indigenous, and we're working with many other opportunities for teachers to help them with their ability to reach this goal of being a fully licensed teacher in our classrooms. When Mr. Senator Abler talks about, that person who is maybe a single parent, working 3 jobs, doesn't have time to do it. Well, Senator Abler, I did. I was a single mom. I was doing family daycare in my home. I was serving at the local restaurant on the weekends. And on the alternative weekends, I went to school, and I did it. I'm not saying it was easy. And I'm not saying just because I did it, I want to put everybody else through that kind of rigor and stress. But I know that because I did that, I was prepared for the classroom, and I was a better teacher for it. And I understood things that maybe somebody who's never taken an education course might be able to attend. And I also know that when we bring teachers in who are not prepared, it is a huge burden on the rest of the staff and their teammates. If you don't know how to prepare for a lesson or teach literacy or have not been exposed to the new math curriculum or how to do a good parent-teacher conference, those are the things that fall on the shoulders of other teachers and educators and administrators who already are overburdened. So what we're asking is for, if you want to stay in the classroom and be a contributing member and a well-qualified teacher, we are asking that after year 2, as you move through your Tier 2 licensure, that you start to take the coursework and the work that needs to be done. And the school districts should be assisting those Tier 1 and Tier 2 teachers to get that licensure, towards that licensure. And yes, we have financial assistance. We are working towards building collaborative groups within school districts. There are many, many, many ways, many pathways to licensure. And so by insisting, because we see that too many of these Tier 1 and 2 tier teachers are not taking these courses, are not continuing their education, I believe this is a really good way to do that, and we can provide the supports that they need. So I would say vote no on this amendment.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, we have a tendency sometimes to talk about Tier 1 and Tier 2 licensed teachers almost like they're, and I don't mean to put words in people's mouths, so that's not what I'm implying with this, but we sometimes speak about them or imply that they are a lesser teacher in the classroom. And I disagree with that. There are qualifications in different tiers that might differentiate folks depending on their licensure, but the fact that someone's quality as a teacher has to do with what tier level their license is, I think is false. As was just mentioned, someone could have 6 years of experience teaching in a classroom at a Tier 2 level, and we're saying in some instances we're going to value somebody that comes straight out of college with little to no classroom teaching experience more than someone who's been in the classroom for 6 years working with and impacting kids. That's the issue. There are common sense aspects to the multiple various different pathways that allow teachers of all demographics to be in the classroom and achieve a licensure. That's what this amendment is seeking to do, to preserve those pathways, to honor, regardless of your tier level, your contributions to our schools and to the kids in the classroom, and keep people there and allow them to continue to serve and do what they're called to do, which is helping our kids learn. So that's what this amendment seeks to do, and I hope that we can be supportive of that. Thank you.
Senator Cwodzinski.
Thank you, Chair. I think Senator Kunish basically summed up my philosophy on this. And the other night when we heard this bill for an hour and a half, 2 hours, this particular passage, we discussed it. Some testifier, and let me start by going, I think in my 33 years of teaching, the day you got tenure, the day that you got that third year done and you knew you were going to be teaching in that building until the day you retired was probably the greatest day in most teachers' careers, because I probably count on one hand the number of teachers in my experience that left after 5 years or 3 years, because it's this noble profession that you were properly prepared for through an institution that prepared you for that. And the other night, somebody said, I believe the statistic and I think this is going to be the commissioner's biggest challenge in the next couple of years, is the shortage of teachers that Senator Duckworth is trying to help with this, because it is an issue. But the reason I'm going to urge a no vote is somebody the other night said the reason 1/3 of teachers leave after the first 5 years, and then they just gave that statement. And it dawned on me that maybe the reason so many teachers are leaving 1/3 within 5 years is we haven't done a great job of preparing them. And they're shocked by parent-teacher conferences and all the things that aren't community expert of tier 1. And so I urge a no vote, but boy, I tell you, Senator Duckworth and Commissioner, this is going to be maybe the greatest challenge of this body, of our education policy over the next few years. So I do appreciate your attempts at trying to do something to alleviate it, but I don't know if this is the right way, so thank you.
Senator Kunish, did you want to follow up on anything? No, okay. And Senator Eibler, I'll let you have the last word. The thing I was just going to speak really quickly before that. So I had the privilege of being in the House of Representatives when we passed tiered licensure, and I remember at the time thinking to myself, like, it's good, and I had some concerns. One was that at a tier 1 and tier 2 level, a bachelor's degree and then a few other things could get you a tier 1, tier 2 license. I have 2 bachelor's degrees. I am not qualified to be teaching anyone's children. And I'm saying that now so that you should never find me in a classroom trying to teach your 8th graders about earth science. That should not be my job. Because I have not gone to school to learn how to teach children. Do I understand earth science? Absolutely I do. And so I think one of the things that Senator Kunish said really well is that the way we have our system set up right now is that we are allowing folks to go from tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3 with no training or preparation for what teaching in a classroom and teaching to young people is. And that is the part that we're aiming to fix in this bill. And in particular, this bill actually allows people who have a tier 2 license to go into tier 3 with these 3 years of teaching experience. And so this actually doesn't even impact the folks who are currently in tier 2. It's saying, okay, for the next crop of folks that we have coming up, let's make sure they get into teacher preparation programs, which is good. You miss a lot of stuff if you don't in some way learn how to teach children. So I'm going to encourage a no vote on the amendment. Senator Eibler, last word on your amendment, and then we're going to go to a vote.
Well, thanks. And again, I just have to react a little bit. I couldn't disagree more with Senator Kunish, Senator McQuaid, and Senator Cwodzinski. If the person we're talking about is a 6-year tier 2 teacher, they know about teacher conferences. They've survived. They probably could mentor somebody else. These are not like random. You don't want me teaching either. And Senator Cwodzinski agrees with that. So we're going to not teach together. This is not. I can't remember what I said 2 classes in a row. I've tried going to some of these day things, but these people do. They know the prep. They know the building, and they are valued. If you listen to, are we not listening? Did you not hear some of those students that were talking, and some of the teachers who were like loving this, who have dedicated themselves. They are the coach for some of these young people. Kids need a coach. They need people of color. They need people who look like them. And 25% of this cadre is that. And we have a program in this bill hoping that will accomplish something of that. To turn it away is like, okay. I mean, you talked about experiencing and mentoring, and so let's, all they don't have is a piece of paper. They could teach some of those classes in those educational places. How do I reach into this troubled child? How do I help him stay in school? How do I help him to go home and tell his mom, look what I did? Can you want to meet my teacher? Yeah, let's go meet them at the conference. Because it's not people, some of these students are easy to draw in. My kids bought the deal. They bought grades. They thought, we said it was important. Okay, we'll do the grade thing. But some of these kids, like, I'll give you an A or a C, like, whatever. Doesn't help me in my home situation. Doesn't help me hope for the future to get a job, to be safe, to not worry about the gangs and not worry about who I am. Do you think that life experience means nothing? I'm going to go stick with the 6-year teacher we're talking about since that came up. Like, oh, they haven't got the little class on something, but they're capable. Don't walk away from it. One last chance. Please vote yes. Thank you.
All right, we're going to vote on the A9 amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Madam Chair, request a roll call.
Senator Duckworth, we were in the middle of voting. I'm going to ask that we continue with this vote, but if you want to request roll call on future amendments, let's do that right away. Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No.
No.
The amendment is not adopted. All right. I'm going to time check us. It's 2:30, folks. Do you know about how many more amendments you have? Okay, Senator Riesenberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to offer an amendment, and then I have to go to a meeting.
Okay. Senator Riesenberg offers the
A8 amendment.
A8 amendment. Go ahead, Senator Riesenberg.
So if you go to page 42, it would delete line 21 and 22. Madam Chair, is it appropriate to ask the commissioner a question, or I guess I don't know, he's here.
I'll defer to Senator Cwodzinski on that.
Can I ask you a question? This is a question this is an amendment that would refer to the Commissioner of Education, so.
Commissioner Jett, feel free to come to the table.
So what?
I'm going to leave that decision up to the commissioner.
Okay. As well.
But not a dosh.
Careful there.
Senator Riesenberg, would you mind giving the commissioner just a second to look at your amendment? Would you like to speak to it a little bit?
Yeah, so it would just, say what it currently says is the Commissioner of Education must embed ethnic studies as related to the academic standards during the review and revision of the required academic standards. Now, I read in this bill, we'll have, ethnic studies in the bill, but now when each academic standard comes up, like math and science and physical education, now to me, that's going to be part of all that. Now, we have math. Now we're going to be adding ethnic studies to math when that comes up for revision. We have science. Now we're going to be adding ethnic studies to science. And we have Phi-Ed. Now we're going to be adding ethnic studies to Phi-Ed. That's what, when I read that line, that's what it does. So I just would like to remove that since we already have the class.
Senator Cwodzinski, would you like to respond?
And Senator, I handed it over right away, so I'm gonna. So sorry that I haven't even looked at it yet.
Madam Chair.
Senator Coleman.
While we wait, to your previous question, we do have a number of amendments remaining, so I would like some guidance from the chair on what the plan is moving forward, given that we do have quite a few remaining.
Senator Coleman, would you mind, you don't have to tell me the exact number, but just parameters, 5, 10?
Madam Chair, we're about halfway through.
Okay.
And I would like to request a roll call.
Senator Riesenberg requests a roll call. Commissioner Jett to Senator Riesenberg's question.
Madam Chair, members, sir, Senator, could you repeat it?
Yes, I will repeat the question. So my amendment would just remove line 21, 22. It says the Commissioner of Education must embed ethnic studies as related to the academic standards during the review and revision of the required academic standard. So we will have an ethnic studies class, but then as I read this, as each academic standard would come up, you'd have to embed ethnic studies into those classes that's how I read this. So that's what it seems like to me. I don't know why we would be putting ethnic studies in math and science and Phy-Ed and all the other classes.
Commissioner Jett.
Madam Chair, Senator, the purpose of that language is to make sure that we're embedding those standards and revisions into all of our coursework, and it's to make sure, it's to ensure that it's there. I'm hearing is your question, do I agree with this sentence, or are you asking the question?
Well,
Senator
I mean,
Rosenberg.
sorry, thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, Senator
I just, since you're here, I thought I'd have you come up, and ask. So, because I know, like, my question is, we will have this class, but now it seems like we would be putting this in everything. You want to come up? Yeah, please.
Mr. Uni.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, committee members, for the record, my name is Ado Shuni. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the Minnesota Department of Education. I appreciate the opportunity to field this question because it's kind of a technical in nature. And so the language in question under the amendment would be embedding ethnic studies across the academic standards at the state level. So just as a reminder for the committee, under statute, the Minnesota Department of Education is tasked with reviewing and revising every 10 years academic standards for, I think it's like 6 or 7 topics. Mathematics, English language arts, social studies. And one of the areas that we're asking for in this bill is to embed the content of ethnic studies across our academic standards. So embed them into mathematics, into science, into social studies, into ELI. We've already started that with the social studies standards. I do want to make a clarification. This is not about creating a specific class. I know that the legislature is considering that in another bill, but in the governor's bill, it is about embedding the content across academic standards and not mandating a particular class or a graduation requirement. I think to your other question, Senator, about why we would want to have it in other topics, maybe outside, or other academic standards outside of social studies, the purpose is to recognize the contributions and histories of all of our Minnesota citizens across a range of issue areas. And that shouldn't just be included in social studies, but there are histories and contributions of all of our Minnesotans that play into science, that play into English language arts, that play into other areas.
Senator Wiesenberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I don't think it's bad as long as it's, we're doing it in a helpful way, I guess. I don't know. I would still move that we, maybe go with my amendment, and then if we can talk about it more. I don't know if that would be acceptable to the chair.
Senator Cwodzinski.
I would encourage a no vote.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Senator Duckworth.
It would be helpful for me, since in this bill there are certain areas in which ethnic studies are referenced multiple times. Could staff or somebody read what the definition of ethnic studies is, as well as the ethnic studies curriculum?
Senator Duckworth, yes, and I actually want to get Senator Coleman an answer. I think we're going to recess for 2 minutes to just figure out when we're going to reconvene, and then we will reconvene to talk about that. Okay. Would you care to read the definition of ethnic studies?
Madam Chair and members, if you have the A3 handy, the definition of ethnic studies is on page 28, starting line 3. So ethnic studies means the critical and interdisciplinary study of race, ethnicity, and indigeneity with a focus on the experiences and perspectives of people of color within and beyond the United States. Ethnic studies analyzes the ways in which race and racism have been and continue to be powerful social, cultural, and political forces, and the ways in which race and racism are connected to other axes of stratification, including stratification based on gender, disability, which was added with the A18 amendment, class, sexual orientation, gender identity, and legal status.
Madam Chair,
Senator Duckworth.
and then if so there's that, then there's also ethnic studies curriculum. And if that definition could be shared too, please.
Senator Wiesenberg, I'm getting word that we'll probably have to recess before the vote on your amendment, just so we can clear out in time for the next committee. And then we will come back, share the plan on when to reconvene, and then the first thing we'll do when we reconvene is continue on with your amendment. Okay, go ahead.
Madam Chair, members, within the A3, if you turn to page 83, there is the definition of ethnic studies curriculum, and starting on line 24. An ethnic studies curriculum means the critical and interdisciplinary study of race, ethnicity, and indigeneity with a focus on the experiences and perspectives of people of color within and beyond the United States. Ethnic studies analyzes the ways in which race and racism have been and continue to be powerful social, cultural, and political forces, and the connection of race to the stratification of other groups, including stratification based on gender, class, sexual orientation, gender identity, and legal status. The ethnic studies curriculum may be integrated in existing curricular opportunities or provided through additional curricular offerings.
So Senator Duckworth, essentially the same definition with an added line about where it can be offered.
Thank you. And I guess the author of the amendment is seeking to make it so that the commissioner doesn't have to embed this throughout schools, and then in theory it would be left up to school boards. I think that's my understanding, which is why I would support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. Senator Cwodzinski. We are still on the A8. Would you like to?
On the A8 amendment, I encourage a no vote, and I'd like to remove my recess motion and see if we can finish in the next 12 minutes.
Okay.
And I would request a roll call.
Roll call has been requested. Thank you, Senator Duckworth. The clerk will take the roll on the A8 amendment.
Senator Abler. Yes. Senator Bolden. Senator Coleman.
Yes.
Senator Duckworth.
Yes.
Senator Hauschildt. Senator Kunish. No. Senator Mann. Senator McQuaid.
No.
Senator Wiesenberg.
Yes.
Senator Cwodzinski.
No.
Senator Hauschildt. Senator Mann.
With the vote being 4-4, the amendment is not adopted.
Madam Chair,
Senator Duckworth.
have you had a chance to speak with Senator Coleman at all by chance? We've slimmed down however many we have left. We might be able to power through relatively quickly. It's your call, though, obviously.
Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. After consulting with Senator Cwodzinski, we are going to try to get through our last 3 amendments before we have to yield this room. So,
who is offering the next amendment?
Sounds good.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I offer the A12 amendment.
Senator Duckworth offers the A12 amendment. Would you like to explain your amendment while it is distributed?
I would. So a portion of this bill has a repealer that removes what is a civics test that has been in state statute for some time, that has students have to demonstrate that they've received the appropriate level of knowledge as it pertains to civics. And part of that is a test administered by districts to ensure that students have learned what we would hope and expect they were to learn regarding civics or civic duty here in the state of Minnesota. Kind of going along the lines of the previous amendment, we're seeking to embed a whole lot of other potential curriculum and topics and subjects. I think the least we could do is still keep what is a very simple civics test to show that we are committed to helping to make sure that all Minnesota students understand what it means to be a Minnesotan, what it means to be an American, and how we can continue to uphold our very civic duties that I know that the author of this bill is very passionate about as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. Senator Cwodzinski. To the A12 amendment.
Yeah, I'm going to urge a no vote on it for now.
Madam Chair, I would request a roll call.
Roll call been requested. The clerk will take the roll on the A12 amendment.
Senator Abler. Yes. Senator Bolden. No. Senator Coleman.
aye.
Senator Duckworth.
Yes.
Senator Haustrald. Senator Kunish.
No.
Senator Mann. Senator Mayquaid.
No.
Senator Weissenberg. Senator Cwodzinski.
No.
Senator Haustrald. Senator Mann. Senator Weissenberg.
With 3 yeses and 4 nos, the amendment is not adopted. Senator Coleman. Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have the A17.
Senator Duckworth offers the A17 amendment. Would you like to explain your amendment while it's being distributed?
I would, Madam Chair. Thank you. The A17 amendment would strike language on page 3. Excuse me, it would add, actually, there's language in the bill that's striking current state statute. This would actually try to keep this language in state statute. It's lines 3.8 and 3.10 on page 3 that state, after the rules authorized under this subdivision are initially adopted, the commissioner may not amend or repeal these rules nor adopt new rules on the same topic without specific legislative authorization. And then if you look at the actual amendment on line 1.4, it also would add, proposed revisions to the statewide academic standards under subdivision 4 must be reported to the legislature before finally adopted by the commissioner. The commissioner may adopt the revised academic standards through the rulemaking process if directed to do so by the legislature. At the end of the day, what this amendment seeks to do is uphold the role of the legislature as outlined in state statute. I'm always hesitant whenever we are stripping away a duty or some ability or authority of the legislature, which is what the bill does in its current form, as I mentioned earlier. This would respect the legislature's role in how we are to govern as a state, and it would allow the legislature to have a role in conjunction with the Minnesota Department of Education, various things moving forward that they would have to come to the legislature to either seek approval for or advise the legislature of. Thank you. And I would request a roll call.
Roll call have been requested. Roll call granted. Senator Cwodzinski.
I urge a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The clerk will take the roll on the A17 amendment.
Senator Abler.
Yes.
Senator Bolden.
No.
Senator Coleman.
Yes.
Senator Duckworth.
Yes.
Senator Haustrald. Senator Kunish.
No.
Senator Mann. Senator Mayquaid.
No.
Senator Weissenberg. Senator Cwodzinski.
No.
Senator Haustrald. Senator Mann. Senator Weissenberg.
With 3 yeses and 4 nos, the amendment is not adopted.
Madam Chair.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you. Before I get to my last amendment, I'm just going to briefly touch on a couple that I'm just going to kind of skip over. So that we did have an amendment prepared that would have talked about the portion of the bill which outlines malicious and sadistic conduct. We were simply just going to offer an MSBA recommendation as to how we could maybe seek to do what that bill is trying to do in terms of protecting sexual, religious, and racial harassment and violence policies. You know, malicious and sadistic, those words in particular are pretty powerful, pretty loaded. I get that. We certainly don't want our kids falling victim to that. But those words in particular and having them posted throughout the schools and in student handbooks, we thought was maybe not maybe the message we wanted to be sending, rather than just trying to focus on protecting and not harming kids. I think the only times I've ever heard malicious and sadistic conduct referred to is in my time in the military when we're talking about enemy prisoners of war. And I certainly don't think that we think that's going on in our schools, so that would have helped tame that a little bit. And then there was one that had to do with page 87, section 5, which was curriculum policy, and was kind of an overreach in terms of the state stepping on the toes of local school boards to determine how they want to manage curriculum policy and their teachers and what's being taught in the classroom. But for the sake of time, I'm going to skip those, Madam Chair, and offer the A11.
Senator Duckworth offers the A11 amendment. Would you like to speak to it while it's being distributed?
I will briefly. Thank you, Madam Chair. On line 1.4 through 1.6, it talks about the section is effective for students beginning in 9th grade in the school year following the year in which the 90% the 90% of district students achieve grade level reading proficiency as determined by a statewide reading assessment. Essentially, it's saying if we're going to mandate all this additional curriculum and changes in the classroom that's proposed in this bill, that schools or districts aren't expected to implement it until students are at a 90% literacy rate per their grade level. And here's why we're offering that. It's pretty apparent that teachers have been telling us that their plates are full. We keep adding to it and adding to it and adding to it, and they're getting frustrated because it's not allowing them to focus on the very basic academic instruction that we know their kids need, that parents say their kids need, that schools and districts say that these kids need. So before we just keep adding more to their plate and requiring them to change curriculum, change instruction, do all the other things that this bill is going to cause them to do, what they would first have to do is help our kids achieve a 90% literacy rate in the state of Minnesota. Honestly, that's probably the sole focus this bill should have. I appreciate many aspects of it, many of the things that it's trying to get at, but one huge missing component and piece of this bill is what are we going to do from a literacy standpoint for the little kids in Minnesota that are struggling to learn to read. And I know we've got stuff coming down the pipeline, and hopefully we'll get to that, but we are into our third month of session, and we're not there yet. The other portion of this bill would talk about regional centers of excellence. If you look at line 2.16 of the amendment, it says, reading focus. Regional centers of excellence must prioritize reading using scientifically based research that includes fluency, phonics, reading comprehension, vocabulary development, and language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling, commonly referred to as letters training. In last but not least, lines 3.9 to 3.10 say that in February of 2026, would require teacher candidates to receive instruction using letters, and that would be something that Pellsby would help implement. So I know we're running short on time, but if we did not take the opportunity to at least discuss literacy in some aspect while we're here in the policy committee, that would have been a failure on our part. If you vote yes for this amendment, then at least one aspect of this bill will have to do with literacy. So if we could put our kids first, take the input from teachers and parents, and do our job as a legislature to serve them, I would ask that you pass and adopt this amendment so we can do some good work on behalf of those kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. And folks, I'm just going to urge a no vote only because that we have a huge literacy bill that's coming that is incredibly comprehensive. One of the pieces it deals with that this amendment doesn't deal with is the assessments through which they're assessing literacy. Some folks are using assessments that don't work. So we wouldn't have an accurate 90%. So I'm going to urge a no vote, but I'm really, really excited to talk about literacy and excited to talk to members about that. And Senator Abler, go ahead.
Thanks. Is there a roll call on this one?
There has not been a roll call requested. Would you like one?
Since
Roll
I
call's
forgot
been
the one that
requested.
Now
Correct.
I picked up my partner. Anyway, so I have a few thoughts on this amendment, and I'll just work them all into this amendment. This is where we need to be. And I'm excited to be on the committee, but at the end of the day, we have a bill that isn't going to make learning better for the average kid in a classroom. There's no attention to literacy, no attention to math, no attention to school violence, which is all over the headlines, where people are afraid to go to school, and some people are leaving the public system because of that, because of some of the pressures that are imposed by bills like this. And education is not supposed to be a partisan thing. I came here to work collaboratively, to make a difference. And that's how I am, and Senator Duckworth and Coleman and Wiesenberg have all come to participate in this. Instead, what we have is a bill that's kind of recycled from the department that is actually going to deepen the racial divide. Parts of this bill I find offensive to me. And I'm an understanding one. And I understand where you're going. We've had serious conversations in this committee about how do we bridge the gap. But there are many people who are going to be driven away by this, who are going to be less understanding. Nothing to do with the tobacco and the mascots and the regalia. That's awesome. But in the way we're going to embed anti-racism into curricula and have discussions that are going to not be very good ones, like has been in my district, where people then leave less understanding and less engaged and less willing to talk and more willing to be hurt. And so that doesn't help the people who need to have the understanding to be drawn in. And that's what we're losing in this. And I mean, I hope we have more of a product out of this committee than just this. This bill could have had 10 votes. We gave a lot of advice about how to get rid of some of the stuff and how to improve some of the stuff and even add some things. Not just today, but over the course of the deal. Instead, didn't change by a word. So I stand ready with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to make a difference for the kids, the ones we saw last week, the ones who are sitting back in the crowd here, the ones who want to go and be all they can be under our watch. We are their hope to run all this stuff for 80% of the traditional, of the students in Minnesota are under our watch. So anyway, this amendment will be a good start toward rebuilding that. I urge a yes vote. Thank you.
The clerk will take the roll on the A11 amendment.
Senator Abler. Yes. Senator Bolden. No. Senator Coleman.
Yes.
Senator Duckworth.
Yes.
Senator Hoschild. Senator Kunish.
No.
Senator Mann.
No.
Senator Mayquade.
No.
Senator Wiesenberg. Senator Cwodzinski.
No.
Senator Hoschild. Senator Wiesenberg.
With 3 yeses and, three yeses and 5 noes, the amendment is not adopted. All right. We are at the end. Senator Cwodzinski, to your bill.
Thank you, Senator Coleman, for what you just did 15 minutes ago. Appreciate it on behalf of all of us. We'll summarize a little bit more Monday, just final thoughts on the bill, just if you care to just weigh in again, others. But for now, I just want to thank the pages, wherever you guys are, because your stress level is probably about as high as it gets. We appreciate you working with us. So thank you, pages.
All right.
Madam Chair, roll call.
Senators Abler calls for a roll call. Senator Cwodzinski renews his motion to adopt the A3 amendment. The clerk will take the roll. Say it again. Okay. So all those in favor of adopting the A3 amendment as amended, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The amendment is adopted. To the Senate File 1311 as amended. Roll call been requested, roll call granted. The clerk will take the roll.
Senator Abler. No. Senator Bolden. Yes. Senator Coleman. No. Senator Duckworth.
No.
Senator Hoschild. Senator Kunish.
Yes.
Senator Mann.
Yes.
Senator Mayquade.
Yes.
Senator Wiesenberg. Senator Cwodzinski.
Yes.
Senator Hoschild. Senator Wiesenberg.
All right. With 3 noes and 5 yeses, Senate File 1311 as amended.
5 yeses.
With 5 yeses and 3 noes, Senate File 1311 as amended is passed and referred to general orders. We are adjourned.
Good job.